right. Welcome back. Welcome to the Late Show with your host, Young Brando. As you know, we're back in Los Angeles and starting the year off with a bang. I'm going to get to my scotch tonight. God willing, it'll be great. But before that, we're going to talk about watches. I've stuffed my face quite a bit today and earlier, especially with a lot of delicious vegan cheese that I got. They have these beautiful cheese wheels now by a brand called Miyokos that has a lot of flavor. So I've treated myself to it. Um, Ended up eating more crackers than cheese, but hey, it's fake cheese anyway, so who cares? Um, I also had the chance to visit the Tudor boutique again at the end of the day, the one in the Westfield Century Plaza. Um, Thank you, MCM. That's very kind of you. Um, I don't know. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I need to see the inside of a gym again after a long while. But anyway, I had the chance to stop by the Tudor boutique in Westfield Century City, which is actually a nice mall, but most importantly, that's a very nice boutique, very helpful people. You know, when it comes to some of the other boutiques, especially the way they run the Audemars Piguet boutique in Beverly Hills, I don't have a lot of great things to say about West Time. But when it comes to the Tudor boutique in um, Westfield Century City, I think they're doing a stellar job. They're always stocked up. If they don't have one of the models in the catalog, it doesn't take them very long to actually get it for you. So it's a breath of fresh air. I know that that's usually the case with just a handful of brands, anyways. Other than that, unless you are going the way of a boutique brand or something of an independent with a very limited production, you should be able to get your hands on these watches. And soon enough, with the way the market is trending, um, we are gonna be at that stage again where the discounts will not only be possible but plenty. And everything is back in the case, more or less, except for stuff that is um, not extremely hyped up, uh, not extremely rare. It's it's quite all right. And I think this kind of return to reality, this return to normal in the watch world, is something that I've been looking forward to, and I wasn't expecting it to come back this quickly. I wasn't expecting a return to normalcy this fast, but unfortunately, the severe economic and social circumstances all around the world and the setting in of recession in most parts of the world, if not everywhere, has obviously affected the market of watches quite distinctly. Again, uh, even the most optimistic gray market dealers, even those who have wishful thinking as their primary life philosophy, have had to come to terms with the downturn in the markets. They have changed their tracks. Don't be surprised if they soon start to quote this channel, but that would be too much to expect from them. It isn't ever the case that they give due credit even when they actually copy certain things that you do. But that's okay. That's okay. It comes with the territory. It comes when you're producing original content and when you have a very small amount of exposure, but large enough that people start biting off your style, biting off your content. It happens, and it's quite all right. I wanted to start again today with simply taking a look at that Pelagos 39 that I finally got my paws on, and it's quite a delightful watch. I think, really in its own right, it's just a very nice piece, and that's what I was writing on Instagram. I mean, without being, Rolex killer this, Submariner killer that. I think this is just a great piece in its own right. And one of the things that Tudor has been doing right is that even though they never shy away from tapping into the reserves of that shared legacy they have with Rolex, with every new release, they're also trying to carve out that niche, create that space that's their very own. This is basically more or less, in terms of how it feels, how it sits on the wrist, a Black Bay 58 in titanium. I mean, let's get it straight. Even though it belongs to the Pelagos line, the way it wears, the way it sits on the wrist is very much similar, very much akin to Black Bay 58. It's a much thinner watch in profile compared to the original Pelagos. I think it should be 11.8, which I think is roughly the case thickness of BB58 as well. Of course, it has a different case material, which makes it, in a way, even more of a subtle watch, even though titanium arguably is a more subdued and more tool-like material, at least in this Grade 2 version that Tudor uses in their tool watches. And I think it was really smart of them. Again, when I saw this in pictures, I was of two minds about it, but I think it was really smart of them to apply that sunburst-like finish, both to the dial and in a certain way also radially to the bezel as well. I think, again, the exposure being not too great in a watch boutique indoors, I think it's a great contrast, and it's a great way to draw attention to that dial, which is very distinctive and sits in a way apart from the case, which is, of course, more dominantly satin brushed, and of course in titanium. So I think it wears great on the bracelets, but I imagine that it is even lighter and would kind of disappear in the activity when it is on the rubber strap that they provide, which is in a way kind of a good pair of shoes, right? So when you're wearing a nice pair of shoes that fit you well, that are possibly even made for you, they somehow disappear in your daily activity. You don't really even feel them as you go about your day, as you walk and wander around. And I think there is a certain charm in having a sports watch, an activity watch like that. Of course, I think ultimately the popularity of this watch really testifies to the fact that the tastes are changing. I think people are appreciating more and more subtlety rather than ostentation. They are more interested in how their watch pleases them rather than trying to show it off to someone else, right? And again, it is significant that this is a smaller watch than its predecessor in the Tudor Pelagos line. Of course, the Marine Nationale edition was also a reduced size Pelagos 2. And it is important, again, where people were often dismissive of lighter watches, how people were dismissive of, in fact, vintage watches for being too flimsy, too toy-like. There is now this turn towards titanium in various grades, in varying quality of ultimately finishing. But there is an ascendance of titanium as a kind of luxury metal where people seem to increasingly appreciate the fact that it is something that you can forget about while wearing, rather than feeling it as a hefty, chunky, hunky piece of metal on your wrist. And of course, it has that visual subtlety and a kind of slightly dark luster to it, which makes it arguably quite, inherently sporty, if not necessarily masculine, already in first appearance, at first blush. Yes and no. Yes and no. There's never, I never understand this. I think increasingly I will get these kinds of viewers as the channel expands, because I see in the comments to some of my posts with the short videos, there are people who say, "Oh, this is a fake," or "This is, oh, this is a great addition to your collection," or whatever. In either case, I think most people don't understand the fact that this channel is not a hobby platform. I am an enthusiast, I am a collector, but I am also a YouTuber with a monetized channel. So my aim is to bring all my viewers as much content as possible, as diverse in terms of its content as possible. The idea is to expand the platform beyond the handful of watches that I own. And the point is not to make it exclusive of, say, sub $500 watches or sub $10,000-$15,000 watches, which would be basically the general portfolio of my collection, or even Rolex this, Patek that, right? The idea is to actually go around the US and ideally increasingly around the world, to introduce the viewers to the diversity in quantity and quality of watches that are available to us today. So no, I only own a very small percentage of watches that I show on my Instagram, on my YouTube shorts. Anything you see on my wrist while I'm actually hosting my live stream, rest assured it is mine. But I never had the pretense to say that, I own any of these watches. At any rate, again, I don't understand. I never thought that owning this watch or that made me look a certain way, that I will then get to show off and lord over other people. So it won't change. I might at some point own some of the watches that I very proudly show from auction previews, from boutique visits. It won't really change the kind of person that I am. So I also don't understand for that reason why people keep writing, oh, this is fake. What business do I have posting fake watches that someone else owns? And, to say nothing again of trying to own something that is actually a fake version or an homage version of something that I can't actually purchase. I never approached this world like that. I think I would have been just as happy with the 4 Seikos that I own as I am now with the 9 luxury watches and the 4 Seikos that I own. I just enjoy this, and now I'm making money off of it. So, Long Dong Willie, you can suck my long dong if that bothers you. Sorry about that. Excuse my French. Tim G says, I'm not a Tudor fan. That's okay. That's okay. I'm not necessarily a fan of every single brand that I showcase on the channel, but I am actually a fan of Tudor. I like them a lot. Not necessarily, again, enough to own a piece yet, but now that I had the chance to confirm that I can get something engraved from the manufacturer, I might actually celebrate my next milestone on this channel, which is 5,000 subscribers, and it's gonna come sooner than later, with probably a bronze Black Bay 58, which is by far my favorite Tudor model. And I'm sure the vintage Rolex enthusiasts among you probably appreciate where I'm coming from, probably know why I like that watch so much. Yeah, I mean, they're not perfect watches, right? Tudor certainly is not, not a brand that's, that's faultless. It's not a brand that I worship, but it is a brand that I really appreciate in terms of the style that it brings into the world of contemporary watches. I like the fact that it makes accessible a certain vintage Rolex and vintage Tudor aesthetic to a wider audience of watch enthusiasts and collectors. And I also appreciate the fact that they are a little more experimental, not to say a lot more adventurous than Rolex itself, than the mothership itself. So I like that. I like that coexistence that they have. I like that symbiotic relationship that Rolex and Tudor inhabits, and I like the way that both of the brands, in their own way, carry forward what I like most about those mid-century iconic sports watch designs that I feel so strongly about when it comes to my own humble collection. You remember I was complaining earlier about the uh, Blancpain Blancpain 50 fathoms bathyscaphe they announced ahead of time for February, and this will be my next uh, topic. I actually kind of like it beyond the heart symbol on the second hand. Hey, baby girl, nice to see you. Um, I feel embarrassed now for having gone so hard on that troll, but it's okay. It's okay. We are not. There are no strangers here. Um, and I jokingly said to some of my friends, including Watch Nicholas, hey, wouldn't it be funny if this is how Blancpain is going to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the 50 Fathoms? Of course, I didn't think that would have been the case. Um, and it turns out that they already have something in the offing for the 70th anniversary of the 50 Fathoms. And in an important sense, it is both what a lot of us, as again, diver watch enthusiasts, as fans of 50 Fathoms, were expecting. And in many ways, it is also not what we were expecting. I know a lot of the fans were clamoring for a reduced size 50 Fathoms for the 70th anniversary. So in many ways, or in some way, that's exactly what we have gotten. But probably most people were asking for a 40 millimeter that preserves the Blancpain 50 Fathoms design rather than something that follows the bathyscaphe aesthetic. However, Blancpain basically released this 70th anniversary edition. It is going to be basically a 3 distinct 70-piece runs for 3 major regions, as far as I understand: the Americas, Europe and the Middle East, and Pacific / Asia. And I think they will be available for pre-order soon enough on the website itself at a relatively hefty price tag of 18,500. Since the price is given by Watch Time and in euros, I'm expecting that to be VAT inclusive. So it might be a little less in dollars, but it will probably add up to be roughly the same amount as well once you figure in the tax amount. So essentially, you are getting the same watch, except with a 70th anniversary rotor, which is actually executed in platinum and is not really decorated or designed in any impressive way, to be quite honest. I'm a huge fan of caliber 1315, incidentally, which is the in-house caliber that Blancpain uses in the 50 Fathoms. It is quite a workhorse, and it's not pretty to look at, honestly. I think again, for a machine finished movement, it actually looks quite gorgeous, but most importantly, it has a 5-day power reserve, 120 hours of power reserve, which, for this kind of sports watch is really, I think, something very respectable, if not necessarily something that we have achieved as a standard. As Watch Times editor here, Roger Ruger, says, probably the reason that we are being given we are given a 50 fathoms anniversary edition in 42 millimeters, which is going to be in that distinctive polished stainless steel that Blancpain usually has for their steel divers, is because they wanted to use this in-house caliber, the 1315, because in the 40 millimeter pieces, they usually still depend on the Frédéric Piguet based 1151. The explicit reason that Blancpain gave for actually introducing a 42 millimeter 70th anniversary edition, which incidentally is also a 20th anniversary edition for the modern production of 50 fathoms, which returned in 2003, is that 42 millimeters is apparently more akin to the original 50 fathoms diver that was designed and introduced by Jean-Jacques Fichter in 1953. 42 millimeters of a case diameter, by their statement, is actually closer in size to the 50 fathoms as it was introduced by Fichter in 1953 as the first modern diver watch. Yeah, I love a 50 fathoms myself. The 45 millimeter, I mean, I like it so much that even though it is absolutely too big proportionally to my wrist, I would still like to own it. I think even in 45 millimeters, I don't care about the 42 or 40. I think if I ever get 50 fathoms, it will have to be that large hunk of steel or titanium, whichever I feel is appropriate at that point in time. I really like it as a piece of design. I love the fact that the modern version uses that sapphire bezel for the timing, rotational bezel. And Aidan, this is very good that you actually mentioned it, because there's a very good HSNY lecture that is posted on YouTube. The Horological Society of New York actually has a lecture about the history of the modern dive watch, and specifically history of the Blancpain 50 fathoms. And it is a lecture that was posted on their website. This is one that was called The Conception and Evolution of the Modern Diving Watch by Jeffrey Kingston. And Jeffrey Kingston doesn't necessarily talk about this in that lecture, but the personal history of Jean-Jacques Fichter, who was the designer of Blancpain 50 Fathoms, and at that time, the CEO of Blancpain, is itself very interesting. The fact that he was a diver, of course, has not escaped anyone's attention. That he was born in the city of Alexandria, that he was a very literary character, that he was a very cultured man who, rather than picking up perhaps a more, utilitarian name for the model, actually chose 50 Fathoms as the name, which is something that he apparently took from Shakespeare's Tempest, where Shakespeare has a phrase, full fathom 5, which Jean-Jacques Fichter, kind of turned around and made into the alliterative phrase 50 fathoms. And it's just a very catchy name, right? Submariner is very simple, direct, very utilitarian in a way, hints both at the robustness of the watch itself, its own waterproof and even immersive credentials, as well as hinting towards the fact that it is something that was used in that sort of submarine context, in that nautical context, whereas 50 fathoms sounds a little more, mythical, a little more poetical, and I don't know, a little more, inspiring in a way. And again, I'm saying all of this as a Rolex fanboy, above all. So, I can still not help but be taken by this sort of creative talent. Yeah, my proper Glencairn glasses didn't arrive still, so I'm gonna use an espresso cup to drink my whiskey today. Which is this beautiful little thing. Port Charlotte, heavily peated, 10-year-old single malt, in that smoky style of Islay. Again, I have admitted as much yesterday, even though I didn't have the chance to. This is beautiful, the squiggle. Even though I didn't have the chance to get to this yesterday, I admitted that I'm not an expert. I don't claim any sort of expertise when it comes to Scotch. I very happily and proudly copy the OG of that space, the OG of Whiskey Tube, who is Ralphie.com. Check out his YouTube page. You can search him like that, but I will drop momentarily the link to his website as well. This is something that he chose as the whiskey of the year. Guys, again, my apologies. It is taking more time for me to unpack and and make myself at home in my new place. So we are going to be in my kitchen for some time to come. So I hope that's okay. I hope that's all right. But it will have to do for the moment. So cheers. Oh, mm. Oh, that's beautiful. Mm. It's like to me, it feels like a very nice mix of at least two of the, in terms of the flavors, it feels like a very nice mix of two Isla malts that I really like. Of course, I love Lagavulin. I just can't suffer how expensive Lagavulin 16 has become over the years. So it has that sort of iodine, punchy taste to it, uh, while it preserves also the kind of herbal flavor palette that Lagavulin serves you, but it's also as strong as as its um, as its cousin Ardbeg. I like Redbreast, but I think it's not a great point of comparison to compare Irish whiskey, which Redbreast is a great example, to Scotch in the form of an Islay single malt. Because Redbreast, especially, I won't make a general statement about Irish whiskey. Again, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. Um, it's very syrupy. It's even, in a way, quite sweet. Um, Whereas this stuff is far from sweet or smooth. Uh, it's not really easily palatable. Islay is supposed to be a little more medicinal, a little smokier, a little bit of a peaty, saline, um, an iodine kind of um, flavor range, right? I don't know if you were the kind of weird child who licked the reverse side of the band-aid when you were little. I was. So it reminds me of that taste sometimes, like Lagavulin 16 used to, and certainly I can get that sort of medicinal iodine taste. Both on the nose and also on my palate, on my mouthfeel. Again, sorry to get carried away. I get very easily excited about Scotch, not being in any way, again, an expert, just an enthusiast. So I will return to what I know, um, what I know best, what I know more about, which is watches. Um, yeah, honestly, I do love a lot of the limited editions that they came out with over the years. I like the ones that somehow eliminate the dates, use different kinds of material. Um, and I don't necessarily mind the size. I think there is something about the 50 fathoms that uh, is quite different in terms of in terms of its wrist feel and in terms of its visual appearance than the Submariner. I actually like the fact that it's such a polished piece of work in stainless steel specifically. I also appreciate it when it's so large too. Apparently, this particular edition comes only on a NATO strap, and again, it is a lot of money for essentially just a watch head, but that's the way of limited editions first and foremost. But that's also been the way that Swatch Group positioned Blancpain, especially after they resuscitated 50 Fathoms, which has a very strong claim to be the first modern dive watch, as you can listen to from the lecture by Jeffrey Kingston that was given at the Horological Society of New York already a few years ago. For all your Scotch needs, I'm sending the link to Ralphie.com, which is Ralphie's whiskey, really Scotch focused YouTube channel. He does reviews of other alcoholic drinks too, rum and similar things. JB, so nice to see you. Aiden, yes, it does arrive on a NATO strap and not a bracelet, which again is perhaps a little disappointing for a watch that will retail for 18,500 euro. But again, it's not very surprising considering how the Blancpain 50 Fathom series has been marketed and has been placed in terms of their market pricing. It is an Oxford Rugby shirt, but so much for stolen valor, baby girl. I don't play rugby, and I've never gone to Oxford, but I'm smart enough to have visited a lot of thrift stores on the East Coast, and I always pick up these sorts of things because I just think a rugby shirt is just so cool as a piece of clothing. It's it's usually made up of heavier cotton. It usually has great styling, in terms of the colors. I especially like it when it has like this sort of contrasting color, like, white color, real plastic buttons, right, that have that utilitarian aspect of not being easily ripped off if the opponent is tugging at your neck. So all these styling details, with sometimes the cuffs are contrasting as well. The logos and crests, which inspire some sort of historic interest in me. I don't mind the kind of stuff that Ralph Lauren used to do, for example, and to a certain extent still does, in terms of mimicking some of the styling and creating made up clubs and societies and universities and whatever. But when I can find an item like this in a thrift store, I grab it. So again, stolen valor, I'm guilty of it, but it is what it is. Aiden, my favorite Daytona to get, I'm gonna take the question quite broadly and just respond to it the way I want. feel free to turn me back into the contemporary catalog if that's what you're asking. But I would say 16520. My favorite is actually what JB has just received in the mail a little more than a week ago. Basically, it is the 5-digit Daytona that was Rolex's first offering for that model with an integrated self-winding movement. And it had a production run, as you know, that lasted between 1988 and year 2000. In year 2000, of course, the 16520 was replaced by 116520, which ran on Rolex's in-house self-winding chronograph caliber 4130. This is 16528, quite a beautiful piece of work, with the champagne dial, full gold. But I actually quite like the one that JB got, which is the 16520 with a white dial. So all in stainless steel. White dial, red Daytona writing, and black outer rings for the sub dial. I hope that was a satisfactory answer, Aiden. For the sub, you just have to wait 1 second. My very own sub. That's my favorite sub to get. I was lucky enough that I didn't have to get it. It was given to me. But this is the beautiful 5513 with the original riveted oyster bracelet. And if you can believe it, I did not have to service it since I inherited it, which was 20 years ago by now. The time will come soon enough that I will have to. But these pieces are just incredible. The only thing I had done to it was to send the bracelet to Michael Young in Hong Kong because it had become really, really loose over the years. So it has been restored, basically, the bracelet. And very lightly polished. The bracelet itself, not the case. The case may have seen a polish by my father. I won't blame him. He probably didn't know any better. But the watch itself, I never had it touched in any way ever since I've gotten it. It has seen a lot of wear. a lot of scratches, and even some dents. Some of them put there by me, some of them put there by the previous owner, i.e., old Brando, my father. But it's a watch that has a lot of character, and I don't think I will ever own a watch better than this one. But yeah, that's my favorite sub. I would actually also recommend it, Aiden, that of all vintage Rolex watches that you can get, if you're a fan of the Submariner, 5513 is still a great deal. My God, I mean, you can, unless you are being very particular about, meters first this and glossy dial that, gilt dial the other one, unless you are very particular about details of collector's obsession, 5513, even from the 60s and 70s, you can find a lot of great pieces between $12,000 to $15,000. A lot of money. Don't take me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying it's cheap necessarily, but of all things you can spend your money on that run in that range, I think a 5513, which is one of the most distilled, simple, pure, and beautiful versions of the Rolex sports watch aesthetic, that's it's hard to beat. It's hard to beat. Nick Butter, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. The joy, the joy of making a heritage watch like the Rolex Sub last, have few pieces in rotation, so you don't have to wear that one a lot. I appreciate that, Nick. And I do have, again, I have the good fortune of having a few pieces in rotation. This is a watch that I got this year, actually, the Breguet Type 20. That I do have it on the bracelet, but I like wearing it on this sort of strap, which is actually Alcantara. So kind of a vegan version of the suede, let's say, that I really appreciate and that fits the vibe of this pilot's watch quite well, pilot's chronograph. But you know what, Nick? Honestly, I don't care. I think for me, the legacy of it depends actually on how often I wear it. If I don't wear it at least once every week, I feel like a piece of me is missing. Do you know what I mean? So I do try to preserve the bracelet a little bit. So I don't always wear it on the bracelet. I usually wear it on a NATO strap. The reason it's like that, and also along with my other Rolex watches, is because I put them in storage. I put them away when I was on the East Coast. So when I went out to New York City, I actually left all my Rolex watches behind and made a point of spending basically the month of December without wearing any Rolex, which was very hard and very painful for a fanboy like me. But I survived. Full on John. Thank you, by the way, for reminding people to upvote earlier. It really matters. I really love that. Gives me just a little bit of exposure, but it really does matter. JB says, in year 2000, the world prepared for 6 billion population. 2023, pardon me, nearly 8 billion people. The generation of likely buyers is still healthy globally. Full on John, that's a great suggestion as well, by the way. Again, if you find, I think if you want to go for 60s and 70s, where you dip into something that's genuinely vintage, it's well worth investing in a 5513. If you're gonna go for a later piece that already has the white gold surrounds, that aesthetic is, I think, very richly supplied, very richly provided by the 14060. I think that's the best deal probably. The 5-digit Rolexes, I think these days, if you want a Submariner, no date 14060 or 14060M. If you want a GMT Master 2, 16710. If you like the Polar Explorer, 16570, the Explorer 2. I was just recommending 16520 for the Daytona. I think the 5 digits are still amazing and still a good deal in the long term, right? And you guys know me, for my end, from my perspective, since we are talking about luxury and not necessity, be patient, sit back. I did tell you already last year, already in mid 2022, I said the prices will continue to dip and wait for the first quarter of 2023. And if anything, what I told you and what the professor laid out in terms of the financial forecast has mostly come true. But in fact, the market is developing downwards in ways that perhaps even the pessimists among us were not expecting. So in fact, if you're even more patient, wait until next summer, wait until next year around this time, chances are you'll find even more watches and better deals. But in either case, I don't think you will be disappointed with a good deal that you get on a 5513 14060. Really, I mean, it's just such a pure, beautiful Rolex watch that will stay pretty consistent, and most importantly, give you a lot of pleasure to wear day in, day out. And that's what we want from our watches. Jay puts it really well as well. Charles Bronson, not sure if I want to highlight that, but 5513 was a Bond watch, was a Bond Submariner, and specifically it was the Submariner that was on Roger Moore's wrist. And hey, I don't really like ranking Bonds, except of course, Sean Connery has a very, very special place in my heart as the original version of that character. But I appreciate Roger Moore as well. So it is important to note that. And yes, 5513 on a NATO strap. And let me see if I have any wrist rolls or wrist shots of me wearing that on a NATO strap, so you know what I mean. And it's kind of a ratty NATO strap too. Like it's a NATO strap that I've been using by now for 3-4 years, maybe. So it's just buttery soft by now, and just beautiful and comfortable. Let me see. No, that's oh, this is a good look too. It's on a leather band here. It's on a leather strap. I kind of like it. I know it's blasphemy to a lot of people to wear a diver watch on a leather strap, but I think it's actually quite a cool look. And it's the Dr. No look, by the way. That's how um, Sean Connery's Bond wore his 6538 sub in Dr. No. Trying to see. Nope, I don't think I've posted anything like that. Here it is on the actual bracelet. It looks so amazing, man. By far the best watch ever. The best watch I will ever own, that's for sure. But it's this NATO strap that I also use sometimes for the Breguet Type 20, which again is such a handsome chunk of steel. So similar in that sort of distilled aesthetic, yet so different as well from the Rolex Submariner. There's something about that mid-century tool watch aesthetic again that really captivates me. That's really pure. That's really distilled. That's really uninterrupted. Oh, absolutely. That's true. But then again, Nick, I don't really wear my diver watch to actually dive. As I told you, I do wear it with abandon for the most part, but I don't really take it to water. I don't really take it to the ocean. I don't take it to the pool. So it doesn't, yeah, my Submariner doesn't get anywhere near water to be affected by a splash on the strap or anywhere else. So yeah, I love this watch. All right, it's becoming a little onanistic, so let's try to switch gears. But I will read what Jay says. Jay Sykes, vintage Rolex with acrylic crystal is so beautiful, a charm that is still very wearable. I agree. Look, I appreciate the kinds of things that a lot of heritage brands and neo vintage kind of inspired designs reflect in using domed sapphire crystals. But the way the acrylic crystals get scuffed, the way they get these subtle swirls over time, makes it so warm until it requires a real cleaning or buffing, that I really, really prefer it to sapphire. And also because the sapphire crystals actually get stained so much easier, right? It gets like a fingerprint, or like a little bit of your, grease or sweat can suddenly make it seem quite dirty. Acrylic doesn't get like that. Acrylic gets scratched easier, but it doesn't get dirty like that at all. I want to see a Platona on NATO strap. Well, you'll have to ask some of the other members of the community for that. Unfortunately, I don't have a Daytona, much less Platinum Daytona. Not sure if I will ever feel comfortable spending that much money on a single watch, even if I had it. So, but it would be, I think, a great look, like on a rich burgundy, or kind of a dark brown NATO strap. I think it could be cool. Even like a leather NATO strap, it could be cool. I don't know. I kind of like the fact that people do these sorts of things to watches that people won't expect to see on a NATO strap. And NATO straps seem to get a lot of hate, especially these days. But I think they're cool. It's a nice way to wear a sports watch. So, looking ahead, I think they have already sold out of this one, but I really like this release by Unimatic that they did um, with the Revolution and the Rake. The two magazines that Wei Ko has founded, and he's still leading the watch magazine, which is Revolution. And recently, they have been doing a lot of collaborative releases, some of which I really like, others that I'm not necessarily fond of, yet others that I find extremely overpriced. Pardon me, but this was an edition that was unique enough and affordable enough that I thought was certainly worthy of taking another look. Unfortunately, it's already sold out. So if any of you have gotten it, you will have to tell me, and I would be more than happy to host you here on the stream so we can talk about it in a more hands-on way. But I really like the fact that it has this sort of Cerakote coating that makes it look all white, and not only white on the dial, which I think is, by the way, an amazing look, which is why I appreciate, for example, my Polar Explorer 2. I wanna just show that very quickly, right? Because I'm gonna point out a detail which I think is lamentably missing from this watch, because I think it's a great piece of design with the way they used black accents to surround the lume plates, with the way they used, again, black as an accent for the tip of the seconds hand and for the arrow of the 24-hour hand as well. I wonder why they didn't use something similar for the main hands of the watch, for the hour and minute hand of the watch, because I feel like it can easily disappear on the dial. Perhaps they were a little too carried away with this whole terminology of the Arctic fox and the whole vision of camouflage, that they wanted to see the hand perhaps kind of rising in relief from the slight accent of the shade of the white that is used on it, which looks like it's a little brighter. I don't think you would have much problem reading the minutes, because again, there's enough contrast between the black surrounds of the lume plots and the actual white minute hand. But I feel like it could be a problem with the hour, perhaps, at a quick glance anyways. But then again, I think we all know that these things are mostly aesthetic pieces rather than something that is designed with major concerns for actual timekeeping. But joking aside, yeah, I think it might not be the most legible watch, but this was, I think, a very cool set that arrived with this white rubber band, this kind of camouflage strap, and I think there may have been maybe even a third kind of piece provided there in terms of in terms of the straps. I mean, it's a pretty cool aesthetic. Yeah, so it had this white rubber strap, which gives the watch that sort of all white look, like an Arctic fox, right? Who changes coats in the winter and somehow disappears in snow. There's this sort of um, camouflage kind of snow camouflage kind of two-piece strap, which has a matching um, ceramic coated stainless steel pin buckle. That, by the way, is what they call stone washed. So it has this sort of an effect which kind of frays on the edges, which looks like it is wearing off or it's worn off at the edges, as you would see in old school PVD coated pieces, which I think is a cool effect, by the way. I don't know if they were trying to cover something up, but I still like it. It also has this NATO strap with steel hardware that also has a camouflage kind of look. Let's see if you can. Yeah, you see it has this sort of worn off effect on the edges for the particular way in which they have applied the ceramic coating. Yeah, it's flex material now, Big Meech, because it's sold out. So if you get one now at a premium, you can flex on the punters and say, hey, I have it and you don't. But anyways, I thought this is a cool GMT watch that's not all that expensive, and that's a nice piece of design. And if it is actually legible in a way that I somehow doubt, it's an amazing aesthetic, actually, right? And I appreciate that, honestly, because I want brands to try something different by now. You know, I'm tired of seeing the same sort of homage pieces over and over again that look the same. I'm kind of happy that this is trying something different rather than trying to look like every other diver watch or every other GMT watch that has been released by these sorts of micro brands. I appreciate the fact that the Unimatic has really focused on design and has released these sorts of pieces over the years, both as part of their own line and in collaboration with others that have, you know, that are both very recognizable in terms of abiding by the larger design outlines of classic diver watches, classic field watches, but they are different enough that you can't really confuse it for someone else's design. So I really do appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that they can abide by these kind of universal codes of sports watch design on the one hand, and still make it look like their own. Aiden is putting me on the spot and interrogating me today. I like it. I like it. I would say do something between 1601 or 16014, maybe, right? Get something in all stainless steel, maybe 4-digit. Those have very nice pipe hand dials that I will show you now. That I really, really like. But I got a 5-digit one myself, 16014, which I love wearing on on a leather strap, actually. But it's great on the Jubilee too. So the pipe hand dial is like this. You know, you have that chapter ring on the outside that is step down, right? Or rather, the center of the dial is a step up from the chapter ring. So this is the classic 4-digit stainless steel Datejust with the white gold bezel, 1601. On the matching Jubilee band, which has folded links in this version, and that would be period appropriate. And of course, those bracelets loosen up over time, which is an acquired taste. You may or may not like it. You will also be well served if you go for one more generation into the future and get something slightly more modern, like late 70s to early 80s, which is 16014. I have one of these. You can also go for 1603, which is the one with an engine turned matching bezel. So it's all stainless steel. But for one reason or another, I actually like the aesthetic of stainless steel Datejust that has this sort of monochromatic look with a silver dial. It can be something patterned, you know, what they call linen, for example, is a nice look. But I like how that muted, monotone look is broken by the fluted white gold bezel, which has a very particular kind of glimmer to it. And that's a nice touch of luxury on what is otherwise a very down-to-earth, very humble, very utilitarian watch. And remember, these pieces are, of course, in the traditional 36 millimeter case sizing. So it's even more subtle because of that. I don't have all my watches with me still, but I can show you probably a video here where I have it on my wrist. Let's see. And trust me, by the way, if you are not really a big guy with, you know, very thick, meaty wrists, a 36 millimeter Datejust is still, you know, still a good sized watch. Look, I have it here on a leather band. and it looks quite nice. It looks quite right, actually, as a size, as a proportion. Something that is a lot more subtle and a lot more humble than most of Rolex's quote unquote professional or sports watch um, ranges. I really love that silver linen dial. I think that's also a very nice textured detail. Yeah, this is a beautiful piece. John D says, very clean lines. 36 millimeter is an elegant size for this specific watch, as they wear a tiny bit larger. I think so. I think it's because the dial is quite large itself, and the fluted bezel, I think, also adds a certain kind of presence, um, which makes it wear bigger, as you said, John, than what you might think if you just look at it on paper. All right, I will take a quick break here, but before I take the break, I wanna leave something nice on the screen for you. I was laughing a lot during the day because of this, because um, I just posted this very unique two-tone um, Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar. This is a piece they released in 1996, 1997. The reference number is 25820, and they had it in different metals, of course, in stainless steel, pure and simple. They had it in precious metals, in platinum, um, and also in two-tone, which they executed in any number of ways. The tantalum base with pink gold accents was very unique and very popular at the time. But this two-tone, I thought, was really beautiful and unique in the way that we were just looking at the classic Datejust in stainless steel with the white gold bezel. In this case, what you have is a stainless steel case and bracelet, but you have the octagonal bezel that's in platinum and the interlinks that tie one link of the bracelet to the other are also in platinum. So you have basically a two-tone or a bimetal watch in two distinct genres of white metal, which gives a very accented and textured look that's a little more heightened by that Grande Tapisserie dial that is in black, and those mirror polished silver outer rings for every single subdial. So I will leave you with that for a second. It was this watch, and I was laughing mostly because, again, it must be the time I posted. I posted it again somewhere around 4:15, 4:20. That's the time when I get most hits on these shorts, and everyone was making fun of how hairy my arm is and how I look like a dog, and I love that. I kept responding to them with woof woof, which is of course just wonderful. Bigfoot, Scooby Doo, or Shave Much. This I thought was great because I actually love um, integrating that sort of ritual as part of foreplay. So I was wondering if this nice lady would help me shave. But anyway, enjoy the watch. I'll be right back. Mm. All right, I'm back. Let's pay attention to the chat a little bit. John D says, I saw the Datejust 41 and felt the bezel was displeasing in scale as it related to the rest of the case. Felt a bit too large, which removes some of the elegance in my eyes. Look, I mean, I don't want to generalize, and I don't want to seem like I'm dismissing an entire line or even catalog of the watches, but that sounds like a lot of the misgivings that I have with many of Rolex's contemporary lineup. I feel like the proportions are just not what they used to be. But you know what they say about nostalgia, the past isn't what it used to be. People like me who clearly have made their choices and have a preference for vintage watches are never going to be quite pleased with what is modern, what's really contemporary anyway. So that's how I feel. And for me, the Datejust any larger than 36, and even the president as well, right? I thought the Day 2 and Datejust 2 were atrocious. Thankfully, that was recognized as a mistake and scaled back quite quickly. But um, yeah, that's even the 40 and 41, I feel is usually a little large. But it is what it is, that these are the times. Full on John says the Datejust 41 smooth bezel, too big, fluted, not as bad. I think the smooth bezel makes the watch look a little bigger at any rate. So it's certainly too much for the larger sized Datejust. Similar issue with the Aquaterra. We are talking about the Omega Aquaterra 38 to 41. I think, again, look, numbers sometimes can be a little confusing. I don't think they're everything. I think how a watch wears, depending on its thickness, on how it sits on the wrist and how it sits on your wrist specifically, depending on how the proportions of the dial compares to the complete dimensions of the case, and also simply depending on the genre of the watch. I think if something is supposed to be a dress watch, a watch that's more appropriate perhaps for occasions that require a little more formality, a little bit more of a subdued elegance, they should be smaller. And similarly, if you want just a nice chunk of steel or another metal on your wrist, because that's what makes you feel sporty, that's what makes you feel masculine, and that's what makes you feel simply more confident and more present in the activity that you engage, even if it is as simple as walking on the boardwalk with a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. By all means, I think sports watches or sportier watches ought to be a little bigger as well, ought to be larger than life in a certain way, because they are supposed to be those mythical creatures that accompany you when you are taking over a kind of activity that's not really of an everyday thing for the average man at this point in time. So I think it really depends. I don't get too stuck on these numbers and measurements. I always, as you see from the kinds of content I post on Instagram or on my YouTube shorts, you see I like going out, to secondary watch dealers, to jewelers, to authorized dealers, to auction previews, to boutiques, and try on everything. And I'm doing this for me and for my experience, but also for you, so you get a sense from one watch to the other about how these pieces actually wear. But nothing will replace, of course, your own experience, and you owe it to yourself, especially if you live in a big metropolitan area, to go out and try on these watches in the boutiques, in jewelers, in other sellers on the secondary markets and the storefronts and boutiques they have, as well as auction previews. If you live in Los Angeles, if you live in New York, if you live in Geneva, if you live in London, if you live in Hong Kong, you owe it to yourself to get out there and check out these watches. And trust me, more often than not, you'll be surprised by how welcoming people are, how much they value your presence, and how willing they are to help you out, even if they know that you will not be walking out with a purchase on that particular day. You don't owe it to anyone to do that, and you don't need to be from a particular walk of life. You don't need to be from a certain tax bracket. You don't need to be from a particular kind of socioeconomic background to be able to partake of those things, to be able to go to an auction preview or even to auctions themselves. Nothing disqualifies you. So don't disqualify yourself. Don't hold yourself back from these sorts of occasions and possibilities, and you will be pleasantly surprised for the most part. Mike David from New Zealand. Hey, man. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Welcome to the channel. This, by the way, I just want to fix a few misunderstandings, Nick. I don't think you are right when you say most Royal Oak bezels are this or that. In fact, when it comes to Royal Oak Pure and Simple, and not necessarily the Jumbo Extra Thin, which is their classic model that was mostly released as 1502, as 14802, as 15202, more recently 16202. A lot of the self-winding Audemars Piguet Royal Oaks are in a single metal. So if they are stainless steel, everything will be stainless steel except for the bolts on the octagonal bezel, which are usually in white gold when it's stainless steel. Yeah, they have, of course, they have models that are in full ceramic. Of course, they have models that are in a mix of certain components, especially as part of the Royal Oak offshore product family. But I don't know where you got the idea that most of the bezels are ceramic. I don't know where that came from. And this, by the way, is not a chronograph, but a perpetual calendar. So the 4 dials you have there for subdials are for the moon phase indicator, months, and within that, leap years, date at 3 o'clock, and the day of the week at 9 o'clock. But yes, so this is a stainless steel case and stainless steel bracelet, but platinum bezel, as well as platinum links, as you can see from the rather dramatic difference in what I might say the cold glare of platinum as a metal, and the slight relative warmth of the stainless steel. I had a few different ones. I mean, this is, for example, from the mid-90s. This is actually a Royal Oak offshore triple calendar. It's all in stainless steel, just with some rubber on the crown. This is a 25th anniversary tourbillon, power reserve at 9 o'clock, date at 3 o'clock, the main hours and minutes subdial at 12, and the tourbillon at 6. This is all in stainless steel with just the bolts in white gold. What else do I have here? This, for example, is the new blue ceramic perpetual calendar, 26579. That's all in ceramic. But again, the bolts there are white gold. This is the original reference of the Royal Oak in stainless steel. Again, it's all in stainless steel, including the octagonal bezel, except for the bolts, which are in white gold. This is the D series, so it's like somewhere between number 6,000 to 8,000. Yes, without boring you much, this is the last one that I will show. This is the same model I was just focusing on, that was stainless steel and platinum. This is all in platinum, a 25820. perpetual calendar with that special hammer chiseled Florentine or frosted finish on the dial, and it's all in platinum, including the case, the bracelet, and the bezel. So they can be any number of things, and there are two-tone applications, and there are uses of more experimental materials, even within the Royal Oak line properly. There is a more mix of rubber and other kinds of elements in the Royal Oak offshore family, but it's quite common actually for everything to be in stainless steel, which is how the Royal Oak was first designed by Gérard Jantin when it came out in 1972, even though the prototypes were made all in white gold. And in fact, that's how the Shah of Iran ordered his Royal Oak in white gold. And that was the first Royal Oak to have ever been ordered from Audemars Piguet. As far as silly little historical details go, that is the one for today. No worries, my friend. This is why we are here, to learn stuff from each other, to expand our knowledge together. This is why I've created this platform. PRX is a very nice watch. Yes, I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. I have many times congratulated or lauded, I should say, Swatch Group for this caliber, Powermatic 80. Powermatic 80, actually, as you might know, is basically a caliber that is built on the ETA 2824-2 base. So on the face of it, it's one of the most commonplace, simplest workhorse self-winding calibers in the entire industry. But it is modified to the level that it provides 80 hours of power reserve. Part of it has to do with the reduced beat rate, so to speak, right? Because it is 21,600 vibration semi-oscillations per hour, which equates to 3 hertz instead of 4. So that allows it to have an extended power reserve while still remaining reasonably accurate and relatively shock resistant. But Powermatic 80, which they use all across the board for a lot of Tissot watches, for a lot of Hamiltons, for some Certina watches, is certainly the secret weapon, really, of the Swatch Group, because it really allows them to provide a lot of quality and a lot of value for money under $1,000. I mean, the Hamilton Khaki Field, I think, has the same. The Khaki Field Auto has the same Powermatic 80 caliber that again, makes it a great value at under $600. And when it comes to the Tissot PRX, beyond the styling, you're just getting a pretty good self-winding watch at $650. And trust me, you can find these cheaper on the secondary market, barely worn. A lot of the authorized dealers would be more than happy to cut you a little deal give you a little bit of discount. I know they supposedly sell like hotcakes, but that doesn't mean that dealers shouldn't work for you and shouldn't provide you a little more incentive to get these things. But I think, yes, the PRX is the kind of watch that does look like it costs several times its tag price. And I think that's something that you can say about its performance as well, because 80 hours of power reserve is pretty respectable for a watch at that price point. I think the bracelet again is quite nice. I think it's a little large, the PRX. That's why the quartz version of it, which is a reduced size case, has been also very popular, because I feel it's more universally wearable. But go out and try it yourself, John D. I think it's a watch well worth your time. Full On John echoes the sentiment. The bracelet is so nice. The watch honestly feels like it should cost 2 or 3 times the price. Please hit the like button, by the way. I'm seeing the number of viewers is increasing. It really does help me when you upvote the stream, when you like the video. Obviously not as smooth as a Rolex bracelet, but hands down the best on any watch under 1K. That's quite a claim. I'm not going to contest it, because it is a damn good watch and it's a good bracelet. Full On John says, just wish Royal Oaks had more than 50 meters of water resistance for the most part. Hey, man, it is what it is. Something's got to give, as one says, Full On John. I understand, you look at it from the perspective of a sports activity watch, but the Royal Oak really is actually a hybrid between an ultra thin, elegant dress watch and a sports activity watch that has a brutal modernist design. So in many ways, it wears and it is meant to be worn like it is a delicate dress watch, even though it has, at least in part, the aesthetics of something that is very much in your face and even aggressive in certain ways. Pardon me. So, yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure they can innovate on it, and even with that particular crown, I'm sure they can achieve something much more impressive than 50 meters without using crown guards or an aesthetic adjustment that would make it look less like a Royal Oak. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to make it sit flush on the case, right? You want it to look like a bolt that protrudes out of the case. That's how it's supposed to be. You don't want to make the poor Monsieur Jantin to roll on in his grave, right? So, let's not mess up the design too much, but I'm sure Audemars Piguet could have done something in the 50th anniversary edition that would increase the depth rating, that would increase the water resistance without messing up too much the aesthetics of the watch. I know the new caliber 7121, which is now different from the 2121 that was built on the Jaeger-LeCoultre caliber 920 base, 4 generations, actually offers something quite substantive, which increases, one, the power reserve from 40 hours to 55, which again is not impressive by any standard at this point, but is a much needed improvement on 40 hours, which was really meager compared to the modern standards, which, as you see in watches like the PRX, is 80 hours. In Blancpain 50 Fathoms, it's 120 hours. In many dress watches, it's now 72 hours. Rolex across the board has 70 hours or more. So they really owed it to their customers to increase it a little more. It's also a higher beat, higher frequency movement that is a little more shock resistant with the bridges that secure the movement on the balance wheel. So I would say there have been improvements, and I do appreciate that they introduced the new caliber 7121 for the Royal Oak Jumbo on the 50th anniversary. But the design in and of itself for not the design, but certain aspects of the watch, including the depth rating, leave something to be desired when it comes to the Royal Oak. Full On John says the PRX definitely wears bigger, but it's nice and thin, so it's very comfortable. So the watch on paper is 40 millimeters, but it's relatively thin, right? It barely scales 11. So Full On John argues that it wears very comfortably and the bracelet doesn't pull your hair or catch it. That's super. Have to keep that in mind. I've been enjoying Tissot and appreciate the good things they do. Same for Longines. Both have found their stride lately. I agree. The Swatch Group has been doing very nice things with both Tissot and Longines, and to a certain extent with Hamilton as well. But I'm not saying anything new there, I'm sure. I feel that there is a second way to view value beyond retention or appreciation, finding the objective best product for the least cost. This PRX seems to fit in that space. Hit the like button, everyone. It really helps. I agree, right? That's why I'm proud to have all those Seikos in my collection, because to me, that's great value. If you can pick up a watch at a couple of $100, $200, $300, maybe $400, something that you can wear every day with relative abandon, something that you don't mind banging about, something that really still presents satisfying aesthetics, something that still makes you smile when you look down on your wrist, something that gives you joy. All of these things are, I think, much more important than whether a certain brand or model of a watch is a good way to park your money, or whether it will retain its value or prove an investment grade asset. I don't care about those things, quite honestly. Personally, I have an eye for it. I can, based on the amount of research I do, the kind of attention that I pay to these things, I can advise other people if they are really interested on it. But as a collector myself, from my personal perspective, I don't care about these things like investment value. For me, the best investment for a wristwatch is to get a piece um, that you can wear on a daily basis, and that will basically prove worth the money, the thought that you have put into it, and the emotions that you have invested into it over the years, right? If I end up wearing something on a daily basis for 10, 15 years in rotation, um, whether it's $500 or $15,000, it will have proven to be worth and well worth what I paid for it. My friend, the Aussie expat, has even spreadsheets that kind of tabulate how much these watches cost him on a daily basis, depending on how often he actually wears them. I'm not that meticulous about it, but I do try to keep all my watches in rotation. Um, and I'm always happy to wear them, right? Again, if you look at those shorts on YouTube, you will see me sweating all over those Seiko watches that I wear to the gym on a regular basis. Also, when I'm going to a pool or to the ocean, I wear my Seikos. I'm not gonna wear a vintage Rolex diver to the beach. Not for the sand, not for the salt water, not for swimming, etc. It's I'm going to protect it in certain ways, even though I love wearing all my watches on a daily basis. Full-on John says, well said, John D. And this was John D's statement about value. I feel that way about most Tudor and Omega products as well. Yes, it's a different price level, but I think I agree with that. I sound like a broken record, but the micro brand Zelos is also extremely good under 1K. I have absolutely no experience with Zelos, but I really like the kinds of things that Unimatic and Baltic have been doing at that price point, under or right around $1,000. I also appreciate the fact that both of these brands, both Baltic and Unimatic, we have just paid attention to Unimatic, so I'm gonna turn to Baltic for a second. They both bring their own kind of spin into the yeah, they both bring their own design influences and their own spin into play. They have their own touch, which they add to the mix. And of course, again, all these brands take certain inspirations from iconic designs, from vintage catalogs of other brands, but certainly they also add their unique touches and provide a product that is truly much more accessible than the kinds of pieces that they replicate at a certain level, that they're influenced by. I appreciate it. I also like them because, again, Unimatic is from Italy, Baltic is from France, so it's nice to see different kinds of players in the watch industry. I respect the place of Switzerland a lot for the history of horology and for the modern history of horology. I also respect Japan and Germany in their own ways too, in terms of their contributions. But it can only be a good thing to see different kinds of players, different design influences, different aesthetic touches, and just simply different ideas brought into play when Bulgari comes into this space. from a very different level, and with the push of a huge luxury conglomerate such as LVMH, such as Louis Vuitton, really, right? They control Bulgari. But it's also nice to see from the ground up brands like Baltic from France or Unimatic from Italy, and how they bring their own design influences, their own aesthetic ideas, and their own unique touches into the world of mechanical watches. So I like those two brands. Seiko 5 versus PRX. I mean, look, I think the Tissot PRX is a great watch. It's a very unique watch. So if you want to try something different, and if you want to experience that sort of integrated bracelet sports watch aesthetic at an entry price point, you should certainly go for the Tissot PRX. But Seiko is undeniable. For me, if I'm recommending to anyone a watch under $500, or if I want to add just another watch at that price point to my own collection, I always go for Seiko just habitually, because to me, in terms of the value it represents, in terms of the designs that take their inspiration from vintage dive watches, Seiko is still the easiest choice. That's why I go for Seiko. If I wanted something different, if I wanted an integrated bracelet design that somehow provided this sort of value and quality at the level of an everyday wearer, I would go for the Tissot PRX. I think they are different aesthetics. They are different kinds of watches that have their separate appeal. John D says, some micro brands really make some quality products. Not all are low value. I've been looking at Fairer, Universal, and see they're using very respectable movements. John D, I'm not very familiar with Fairer. I'll take a look at them and I will report back maybe in tomorrow's show. And then I can say something more intelligible about it. And yes, the most recent tri-compacts, releases of the Baltic were really nice, and they are reminiscent of that kind of 60s sports chronograph aesthetic, and they were also proportioned to be like that as well, to wear like those watches. This is a piece that also has a hand wound movement, so it's not excessively thick. It's 13.5, and it scales right under 40 millimeters as well. Unfortunately, they're sold out, but I think this seemed, at least, I don't think they have delivered the final examples yet to people who were able to get their orders in time. But I think these watches, to me, look like they provide decent value at that price point as well, which is around 15, 16,000. Sorry, 15, 1600. Which, by the way, is probably around the same price point as the Tissot PRX chronograph, right, which is 1750. right? You have this panda with the kind of pink gold accent sort of aesthetic, and you also have the blue brushed grain dial with the silver white chronograph registers. So actually, those Baltic tricompaxes were also great value as well. I have 0 Bitcoins. I don't have Bitcoins. I don't have any strong feelings against them either. It's just not an investment instrument that I understand. John D says about Fairer Universal. It's British designed, Swiss built, interesting colors, and 4 very reasonable prices. Again, I don't know, so I can't say anything good or bad about them, but I'm happy to voice your opinion, John D. The movements are very decent for off-the-shelf stuff. Again, it's something I need to look into. And yeah, the Tissot PRX, again, if you like that integrated bracelet aesthetic, I think it should serve you well. All right. Well, listen, everyone. I mean, I'm happy to stay with you. I'm happy to do this for another 2 hours, but with all due respect, except for Nick, I didn't have any super chats or any other kinds of contributions behind the scenes as well. And Monday nights generally are extremely difficult. I know it's really a metaphysical anxiety for me, but I find myself really exhausted on Monday after the workday and at towards the end of a broadcast. So I feel a little less motivated. So I think I'm gonna end it right here. I will pick up the thread of this discussion tomorrow, and maybe we'll look at some other early releases of year 2023. Of course, Seiko has a few things that are already announced, if not quite out there. And there are a few different things that I need to talk about. And of course, I will heed John D's suggestion and look into Fairer as well, and maybe into some other independent brands too. And we'll talk more about what we have on offer that's under $1,000 and that can still be interesting. I did a show like that last year with that particular focus. You know, what do we have under $1,000 that's not Seiko? And Unimatic and Baltic are the 2 brands that I wanted to highlight out of that selection, even now. But we will most certainly return to it and perhaps look into some other brands to see if we can still find some value that comes from unexpected places. Dumpucht, thank you for reminding everyone to upvote. I appreciate that. It really does make a difference. So hit the like button on your way out. Aiden, you're full of questions. Next time you should direct these with super chats, but this is our dynamic today, so I'm not going to interrupt it. I just traveled to New York City and I took 4 watches with me. No, actually, it was 5. I took the new Seiko 5 rowing blazers, with the blue dial. I took my Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso Grand Date. I took my Breguet Type 20. I took my Lemania CH27 1940s chronograph, which is very diminutive in size and in pink gold, and my Universal Tri-Compacts, which is a chronograph with a complete calendar from the 40s as well. So those were my 5 watches that accompanied me to New York for about 3 weeks, or really 22, 23 days. Next, I want to travel to Europe, because it's been a while since I've made it to Switzerland. It's been a while since I made it to Germany. It's been a while since I've been to London or Paris. So I want to arrange something where I can visit the professor in the UK and maybe go to Switzerland with him, which can be an interesting trip, and maybe we can get more, a little more shoots, which we can then integrate into the channel, which we can then use to create some sort of content. Again, Nick Butter, thank you so much for your super chat contributions. For everyone else, thank you for your presence and support. Please hit the like button. It really does help, and it's something that you can do for free. I appreciate you. Thank you for your support. Again, I will see you tomorrow, and hopefully tomorrow we will go for 4 hours with your support as well. If you want to support the channel in other ways, if you want to contribute so that this channel is self-sustaining and completely independent, you can follow the links that are pinned in the chat, provided in the scrolling ticker. They are also included in the video description. So you can always contribute with Cash App or PayPal. If you join my loyal cast of supporters on Patreon at the bargain level, $10 a month, you'll be served on a daily basis with at least 3 links to watch deals online. And these are usually links to listings that provide a value proposition right away, but in the way that they are grouped and served to you, in the way that I organize them thematically, I think they also end up being very educational and informative, because they draw your attention to watches that escape the attention of the mainstream, watches that are not necessarily given the center stage or shown with a spotlight by most people in this YouTube space or on other platforms. So you end up learning quite a bit, I think, not only about the market, the secondary market on watches today, but also quite a bit about what you have on offer, historically and otherwise, in terms of different periods, in terms of different kinds of complications, different sorts of brands that may have already gone extinct, so on and so forth. So that's what you get if you subscribe on Patreon. And I'm about to increase the monthly rate, but if you get your foot in the door now, along with my loyal cast of supporters, again, you will be grandfathered at that particular rate for the rest of the year. I won't exclude you from the further services that I will provide at that increased rate. if you sign up now. I'm going to use this week as the last chance, but after that, that rate is going to increase to 15, and I'm going to think of some other things to provide as value, but it's not going to stay at $10. So thank you again. Thank you for your presence and support. Don't forget to hit the like button before you step out. Thank you for being here. I will see you tomorrow again for a longer show, I hope. Until then, I bid you adieu. Take care and stay on time.